after talking to Henry, now I want to know how is it to be a part of the Fishburners here. And we have Ian here as a startup from the Fishburners. It's called GOFAR. And what was your motivation to start this?
I think life was just really easy before, and I just wanted a challenge. I wanted to work much longer hours for less money. That's right.
Right.
Well, thanks very much for having me here.
Yeah, cool to meet you.
Great to meet you too. We've been in Fishburners for about 5 years now, and it's just been a really good community. It was about 5 years ago, there wasn't much of a startup community in Sydney. And so Fishburners was one of the first co-working spaces that's really brought people together and really made it easier to start a business and meet co-founders, build the team.
What is GOFAR all about? Can you tell that
Sure.
to us in 1 minute?
I can indeed. Well, let's open it up. So what you've got here is a diagnostic device, so Internet of Things. This will plug into your car. So pretty much any car in Germany from about 2001 this will work with. This will connect to your mobile phone and connect to your car and get the two talking. Because you don't get a lot of data from your car, and we're not very good at buying things from
So
our car.
I put this to the CAN bus of the car?
Exactly. So it's just generally above the pedals, below the steering wheel. It just plugs in.
So it's easy to put in for everyone?
It's super easy, yeah.
Okay.
It takes about
And then I connect my mobile with this.
You connect your mobile via Bluetooth. And this is an extra little device that we've created as well. What this will do is this will tell you if there's anything wrong with your car. You'll instantly get an alert on your mobile phone.
App?
We have an app as well, and the app will basically kind of be the brain for your car. So I can sort of see here there's a few trips that someone else has done, not me. And so that was my wife doing the school run this morning. And if I click on that, I get a nice little map. And I can see how much fuel I've used, I can see what my emissions are. So,
what's your target group?
So it depends really. We have different features for different customers. We have a lot of customers using us just for tax tracking. So they need to keep a record of their driving for work or for tax purposes. And we will automatically store all the trips here. And then if you want this to be a business trip, this wasn't, but for examples, you basically just swipe right. And that comes across as a business trip. We've got some people who want to just manage their car, see when the insurance is due, understand if there's any problems, any errors, so they can fix problems before they become expensive. We've got some people who don't care about that. They just need to log their work kilometers. And then we're starting to see some parents, especially parents of new drivers, and this is where this little device comes in. So we've got 9 LEDs here, and they go blue, all blue when you're driving well. So it'll look something like this, where all the LEDs are blue. If you're driving, so if you're braking too aggressively, if you're accelerating too fast, taking corners too dangerously, it will start to go a little bit kind of pinky red in the middle, or then sort of full on red if you're sort of persisting in the behavior. And the principle there is just it's like a hot iron. With the hot iron, you touch it, you immediately get feedback. It's painful, so you don't do it again. We found that when we tested different feedback mechanisms to give drivers feedback on their driving, when it was in an app, they found it very difficult to relate the information in the app to driving because it happened 2 weeks ago, or they have a score. But here, immediately when you're doing something, the car is, the device is responding to your driving, and so you go, oh, okay, I've exceeded a threshold, I need to ease off. And if you're not doing anything particularly wrong and it still goes red, then you're over the speed limit. So you can set it to go, you know, at the speed limit. You can set it to go sort of a couple of kilometers over the speed limit when it triggers, or you can turn it off. It's optional. But people find that very useful because speed limit changes quite a lot in Australia between the different roads.
Right.
It's quite easy to get a fine here.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's GOFAR, and then we are also working with government. We've just completed the biggest ever trial on telematic driving in Australia, and what that's shown is that using this with young drivers, giving them feedback on their driving as they drive, really helps them learn to get safer sooner. And so we've seen a 42% reduction in harsh braking by young drivers in the course of this 4 million kilometre trial. So the government's really interested because young drivers are probably the most dangerous group on the road.
Exactly.
And here we have a graded licensing system. So you go from an L, a learner, to a P1, a provisional driver, to P2, and then a full license. And what happens is when you're a learner driver, you always have someone else in the car. And that's actually the safest you ever drive. But then as soon as you get your P1 license, you're on your own. And then you see the accident rate shoots up, and it takes about 7 years before that comes down to the long-term average.
And with this, you have always someone in your car.
You've always got someone who's got your back, yeah. There's always someone who can give you feedback. But the difference between the feedback you get from GOFAR or the feedback you might get from an instructor or your parents is this is objective and consistent. It's always giving you the same feedback when you drive in the same way.
How many founders are you?
There's 2 founders in the company, and there's 6 people in the team.
It's you and another person?
Yes, yeah. So Danny is the brains, I'm the looks.
And what was your motivation to start this?
I think life was just really easy before, and I just wanted a challenge. I wanted to work much, much longer hours for less money. Yeah, I mean, me personally, I've always loved startup. So I did an MBA about 20 years ago, and since then I've always worked for startups. I worked for a company called Apodo, which used to do travel in Germany.
Apodo, yeah.
Yeah, so
I know that company.
Yeah, so I headed up marketing for Apodo. I worked for a company called eDreams. I did a lot of travel, Booking.com as well. And in Australia, I was running my own business, which was mainly set up in Europe. And in the co-working space, you get to meet a lot of people. And I ended up sitting next to Danny, who's an aerospace engineer, a rocket scientist. And he had this crazy idea that you could change how people drive, make the roads safer, reduce emissions, and cut people's bills. And I thought, well, that sounds pretty good. So we started working together on this. We did a couple. And
you've met in Fishburners?
Yeah, we met in Fishburners.
5 years ago.
Yeah, just sitting next to each other. And so from there we did a couple of pitches, we won a few national competitions and got a little bit of investment. We did a Kickstarter campaign to make sure that we were building something that people actually wanted.
How many money did you raise on Kickstarter?
We raised about 220,000 Australian dollars.
That's pretty good.
And so I think that gave us some confidence that this wasn't a totally terrible idea. There's a market there. Yeah, I think the reality is people on Kickstarter are really weird. You know, so they're not normal people. And what we've done is... You
mean the community or the people who put their projects there? The community.
A bit of both. I think that they're really early adopters, and you need those early adopters, but you don't know how long it's going to take before the normal market follows the early adopters. Right. So you've got to still be, you know, just because you have a good Kickstarter campaign, it doesn't mean you've solved all the problems. You've still got to get to the mass market, and the mass market has different things that they find important.
Yeah,
doesn't just have to be new.
Yeah.
So I think Kickstarter is a really useful thing to do, and it validates what you're doing. But every day you have to keep on listening to customers and finding out, you know, what exactly they want. And that was one reason why we're doing a lot of tax tracking now with the trips. We had that feature in our app, but it was about 2 levels down. So it was a bit difficult, but we saw the customers who were using that and were tagging their trips with business or whatever, they were very loyal. And so we just realized, well, let's just push this to the surface of the app. And so it makes it easier for the customers, and that's ended up being one of our sort of major business channels now as well.
Okay. And do you make profits now? Is this a successful business besides the Kickstarter campaign and all your other efforts?
But the business is making money. I think we've passed about $1.5 million in revenue now. We've got very, very loyal customers, which is great. And what we're also seeing is that there's a real value in the road safety data, whether that's with insurance companies, because they don't know how well people drive. And so what we're trying to do now is move to use the data to empower the drivers, but do it in a way that really protects their privacy, so that they can say, well, look, I've got a score, I'm sort of driving in the top 10% of all drivers, and then the insurance company should give me a discount, but I don't want to have to provide all my data to the insurance company, which is what currently happens with telematic insurance. This way, the driver keeps all their data, but they can prove that they're a good driver, and that's all they should need to do, and then they can get a discount. Do
you think telematics insurance for cars is the future?
Look, I think it's...
Maybe that you only pay what you drive? Or how you drive?
Well, those are the two models: pay as you drive and pay how you drive.
Yeah.
So if you don't drive very far, you shouldn't be paying so much on insurance. If you drive very well, at the moment, most people do drive fairly well, but they're subsidizing the bad drivers. There's a small kind of percentage of drivers out there who cost the rest of us a lot of money in insurance, because the insurer can't tell who's who. They can only tell sort of when there's a catastrophic accident.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to stop those accidents. We're trying to use the predictive data to help drivers sort of drive in a little bit sort of better way, but also to provide an incentive to do so, because that's lacking at the moment.
What advice would you give the Ian that just started GOFAR? So back 5 years.
Yes. I think you've got to be fearless. Don't worry, about certainly don't hide your idea. One thing I think we should have done sooner is when you do a startup, it takes a while before you're proud of the product. I've been working on this for almost 5 years, and it's only in the last year that I've really become proud of the product.
Before you thought it's a shit?
No, I just think you can see all the problems, and you spend your whole time focusing on fixing problems, and so you get a little bit negative. So I think when you have a baby, you show a human baby, you show your baby to people, you don't want anyone to say, wow, that's an ugly baby. And when you've got a startup, you put your heart and soul into this. It's your financial worth, it's your job, it's what you spend all your time on as well. And I think it's similar. You don't want to show people this thing before it's ready. And so you make the mistake of not wanting to show your ugly baby, but you should show your ugly baby, your ugly startup, get as much feedback as you possibly can, because if you're going to succeed, you're going to get that feedback sooner or later, and it is so much better to get it sooner. So I think really do everything you can to be close to customers. And it's the customers, I think, it's great to get advice from people and stuff, but the only ones who really count are customers who will give you money, and then you will get more money sooner. That's the way to go, and that's the one thing I tell myself.
Wow, that's inspiring.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it.
So the customers are telling you the truth?
They do, and even if they're not talking to you, even if they come to a landing page and they disappear, they're speaking. Their silence is quite, it speaks very loudly as well. So you have to have the mechanisms, whether it's surveys or whether it's talking to people, whether it's observing the analytics on the website. There's different ways of doing it. But you have to embrace it, even if it's uncomfortable, because I think it's ultimately the only way that you can get an advantage in the market. And a lot of people seem to find this difficult. So if the startups that you work with and talk to find it difficult, yeah, it is difficult. But if you can force yourself through that, it gets easier. And then that's a core competitive advantage that no one can ever take away from you, that learning. Even if your startup doesn't work, that's an incredibly useful skill, because too many people stay in their office and too many people just look at their screen. So if you're out there and you're talking to customers and you're listening to customers, especially listening more so than the talking, it just builds an advantage into your startup, which means you can run further in 30 days than the other guys can.
What was your biggest fail in life?
I think, you're always just trying to reach your potential. I'm not sure I've done that yet. I'm in a great country in Australia. Pretty happy. I haven't suffered that much. I was brought up by parents who loved me. I had a good time at school. I enjoyed university. I've enjoyed pretty much all of my jobs. My biggest failing, I don't know. I think sometimes there's a lot of focus on mental health in startups in Australia at the moment, because there's a lot of pressure to try and make something succeed, to try and create something when nothing exists. And so I think, sort of having more of a kind of trying to sort of spend time on mental health so that you're living a balanced life. You're not just sort of totally focused on the startup is important as well. I haven't always got that right.
So you mean take a time off, go out to nature?
Personally, I love to be around sort of the national parks in Australia. So I was cycling through the national park yesterday and it was spectacular, partly because it wasn't on fire, which is always a good thing in Australia. But it's just great to be around nature, but also just to take time to not be thinking about work, to be focused on your family. Yeah.
And that was one of your failures in the past, that you focused too much on the business only without taking a time off?
Still now a little bit. And I think...
so you need to remind yourself...
It's a constant. It's a constant thing, yeah.
To take a time off and take your time, take time with your family, with nature, with your bike.
Just time goes very fast. It's sort of in every day, you'll get to the end of that day. So time goes very fast and you need to sort of be doing other things as well. You can't just purely fixate on the startup. And creating something where nothing exists takes effort. It's not necessarily easy. But you're still living life as well. So you can't say, you can't delay the rest of life. You just have to kind of keep going with that stuff as well, and make sure that you're enjoying the journey.
Cool. Thank you, Ian. High five. Yes.
Thanks for having me.
So, and for you guys, check out Fishburners. I will link everything under the video here, and check out Ian's startup. And see you for the next episode. Und damit bin ich raus. Bam!